At the moment when the thick canopy of the ancient forest was blocking the sun's last rays, the sun had reached its highest point. All across the twisting road, there was a weird atmosphere of quiet. The only thing that could be heard was the melancholy howl of the wind, which wove ethereal melodies through the gnarled trees, as if it were grieving the souls of those who had been forgotten for a very long time. When Jeff, a single person who was enshrined in sadness as a result of the unexpected death of his beloved Sarah, visited this remote route, he was joined exclusively by his small son, Miles. Miles was the only company he carried with him from that point on. Throughout the course of their voyage, there was a little kid who was 3 years old and had the look of a cherub. The depths of sadness were highlighted by his innocence, like a lighthouse. An unnamed piece of music was played by Miles, who was positioned at the limits of the back of the carriages. Pierce interpreted it as a straightforward tune that lacked any significant complexities, an enveloping cloud of gloom that swallowed Jeff's soul like a curtain. The astounding incident came amid this short interlude of serenity and seclusion. It was a moment that would irrevocably change the entire structure of their reality. Father, take a look at each and every life that has descended onto this place. Jeff, who was taken aback by the unexpected comments made by his little kid, immediately moved his sight to the looking glass and saw that the road in the rear was barren of any people passing by. If you are referring to phantoms, then I would appreciate it if you could explain what they are. This route has been abandoned, with the exception of the lone carriage that we have in place at the moment. On the other hand, Father, pay attention to the crop fields, the presence of a multitude of magnificent arms, each of which look to be engaged in somber prayer or mournful thought by focusing its gaze downward. The child's words caused Jeff's spine to suffer an unwelcome and icy chill, which he did not anticipate. Jeff, perchance, was painfully aware of the fact that along the path that they walked, neither a cemetery nor a mausoleum stood out as being particularly noteworthy. Through the application of images or tales that are noticed on the luminous screen, it is possible to construct mental representations of figures. Jeff encouraged him to make use of his voice, which was a mixture of doubt and a whisper of fear that was sneaking up on him. Father, please withhold. When I looked about, I saw people whose faces were exactly the same as mine and yours, and they were dressed in the transcendental robes that are often associated with the hereafter. The discussion that is associated with it. The moon's weak illumination lit the window panels during that midnight period, and Jeff suffered restlessness as a result of this. The ramifications of Miles's horrific vision upset him, particularly the idea that his kid had seen apparitions. He was concerned about the outcome of the vision. There is a possibility that the spirits connected to this earthly plane were the ones who sparked an element of primal horror, having an unquenchable need for insight and understanding, constrained by this desire. Regarding the spectral assembly that Miles had described, Jeff set out on an adventure of investigation in an attempt to discover the truth about the situation. Jeff began his investigation into the historical records of the region the next morning, while Miles was preoccupied with the unrestrained play that was connected with his childhood. During the course of his study, he came upon a little cemetery that was located in a remote place. This cemetery was connected to a lost chapter in the history of the town. Because they were abandoned, they were left vulnerable to the destructive forces of time and memory at the precise point when they were at the beginning of their power. Jeff, armed with this newly acquired information, created a strategy to address the mysterious. Heat, by concealing his goals behind the pretext of an ordinary vacation with his kid. He did this by assuming that the trip would be straightforward. Repressing the misery that was seething inside kilometers, He feigned to be excited about our planned adventure that was scheduled to take place today. Whenever he was presented with the possibility of making new discoveries, he continually shone a tremendous deal of excitement, was filled to the brim with obscenely joyful happiness in response. "Could you please let me know whether you intend to come with us to the park?" Jeff's feelings were put under a significant amount of strain as a result of the expectations that his responsibilities imposed, and his response may be characterized as being comparable to uttering. During the time that their transport was getting closer to the Forsaken Cemetery, the scenario that had occurred earlier served as an implicit mediator between them. Throughout the ride, there was a smothering quiet that was both disconcerting and oppressive. Upon their arrival, it became clear that the cemetery was a structure that had been preserved from a previous age. Its bounds were demarcated by a fence made of rusted iron. Its pace was similar to that of a guard who was standing still, and it looked to be a container that was luring them into entering its recollected embrace. Reverends mumbled as they walked through the cemetery, which was filled with mysterious elements and stones hundreds of years old. The fact that it seemed to transcend the chronological dimension and provide a safe haven for living people to communicate with the reverberations of the past was a remarkable phenomenon. In the beginning of their journey, Jeff and Miles were accompanied by the sound of gravel breaking under their feet. This was a striking contrast to the peacefulness that greeted them once they arrived at their final destination, which was a beautiful plain of land. Miles was mesmerized by a building that was unusually magnificent, despite the fact that its outside seemed to have been tarnished by the unrelenting passage of time. This building was protected by stone guards who were restrained in their appearance. In the middle of the darkness cast by the gravestone, Father focused his attention on the statue of yonder gravestone that was located there. The writing that appeared on the stone caused a shiver to go down Jeff's whole existence, which prompted his heart rate to quicken as he neared the stone. From this vantage point, one is able to appreciate the presence of Elizabeth Johnson's beloved grandmother. His consciousness was jerked awake by the knowledge which caused electric currents to ricochet throughout his whole existence. It was impossible to deny the link that existed between the name that was written in front of him and the dams that stretched for kilometers and seemed to be of an ethereal magnitude. While Jeff and Miles were positioned inside the respected walls of that abandoned cemetery, they participated in a conversation with the past. Each and every tombstone stood as a tribute to a life that had passed, and each and every inscription sent a subtle message from beyond the tomb. The revelation was made there, in the middle of the reverberations of existence that has been forever. A reality that is beyond explanation, the being that is the most terrible of all creatures. This is not a reference to the spirits that are present in our surroundings. Rather, it is intended to refer to the spiritual creatures who reside inside the depths of our own souls. Not only did Jeff and Miles carry the memories of the disclosures that occurred during the day, but they also brought with them a deeper understanding of the thin barrier that separates the living from the dead. This understanding was carried into the twilight that existed following their connection. The shadows of twilight stretched out in front of them as they withdrew from that place of everlasting slumber, and a considerable amount of time passed during that period of time.